I'd really like to welcome our last art trade tale of the Global Art Forum today. Kristine Khouri is a great friend of Global Art Forum and of Art Dubai, and is one of our advisors on the Art Dubai Modern Committee, and somebody who over the years has informed a lot of the thinking around the Global Art Forum in general and advised us a lot. So thank you, Kristine, for that. Kristine is an independent researcher and writer based in Beirut. She's collaborated for several years now with Rasha Solti on a very important project looking at the movement of a collection that was created by the PLO or associated bodies, and that most recently was manifest in a exhibition at the Haus der Kulturen der Welt in Berlin called Past Disquiet, and is a long-term project that's evolving as we go along. And I think that's something you might refer to in this talk as well. So to hand over the...
I know we're all exhausted. Woohoo! Woo! Get up and do jumping jacks if you feel like you need it. All right, well, first I want to thank Antonia and Shumon and the team here for speaking, for having the opportunity to speak, and among my colleagues from the Art Dubai Modern Selection Committee. I'm really excited to talk today about one artwork, talk about one artwork through its travels, both physically and its representation, how its representation traveled as well. The work I'll be speaking about today is this work up here, entitled Géométrie Palestinienne, or Palestinian Geometry, which was signed as having been done in 1977. This is a question we have to ask. The work is by Moroccan artist Mohamed Chaba, who was born in 1935 in Tanger, Morocco, and deceased in 2013. Chaba graduated from the École des Beaux-Arts in Tétouan and studied in Rome in 1962 to 1964 at the Académie des Beaux-Arts as well. He returned to teach in Casablanca. And at that time was writing about painting in Morocco. He contributed to the review called Souffle, which was a very important review or cultural publication in Morocco at that time. After his return from Italy in around 1965, his practice really shifted towards a conceptual formalism, which continued until the early 1980s. And in 1966 was a really formative moment for him after an exhibition in Rabat where he and Mohamed Melihi and Farid Belkahia kind of came together and established what was called sort of the Casablanca group or Casablanca school. I'm going to speak a bit about a context, which is important to me, so I hope it's not boring, but I think it's super fascinating, so I hope you will too. And you will understand why I'm talking about it. But unions of art were formed in the Arab world in the 1960s and early 1970s to create a support structure for the promotion and dissemination of Arab artists' work and to solidify existing organic bonds of fraternity around the Arab region. The establishment of the Union of Arab Artists formalized this networking and exchange and cooperation between artists at a regional level. The idea had been discussed at a number of festivals and events starting in Damascus in 1971, and later was very formalized in 1973 in Baghdad during the Al-Wasti Festival. Ismail Shammout, a Palestinian artist, was named the first Secretary General, and the union their mission was really grounded in promoting the relations between the Arab world and Third World, as cited by Shammout in an interview he had done. The union, I mentioned this union because they actually were the ones that initiated a really important series of exhibitions, which were called the Arab Biennials, or Ma'rad al-Sintain. And the reason I want to give you a sense of what this union was is because this work appeared first, from what I can tell, in 1976 in the second Arab Biennial. But I'm going to come back to 1974. To the first Arab Biennial, which took place in Baghdad. There was an Intégral, which was a very important magazine in Morocco, French language magazine, was a review of plastic and literary creation, and it was founded by Mohamed Melihi in 1971. It often had texts and debates around art in Morocco and in the Arab world. And in that issue in 1974, in December 1974, there were interviews with Moroccan artists of their impressions of this first biennial in Baghdad. And Mohamed Chaba actually penned a separate text, which was titled Révolution Palestinienne and Peinture Révolutionnaire. So that's Palestinian Revolution and Revolutionary Painting. And that was his response to the first biennial the first Arab biennial in Baghdad. And in that text, he critiqued quite a bit, actually, the Palestinian artists' participation in their work. And 10 minutes, cool, okay. So he was really trying to explore what the questions were, what he was seeing for the first time, and noted this is the first time that they were starting to see Palestinian artists' work. And this is why this event, these kind of pan-Arab events were really important, is that there was this opportunity to see artists' work from not too far away. Speaking of networks, we are so privileged to be here today to meet each other in a city like Dubai, but in the early 1970s, there was a lot of work done by artists and sometimes support by governments to bring artists together. So this is a sort of a precursor to this sort of intra-Arab networking. So his reaction to the work really was sort of critiquing I'll sort of paraphrase what his kind of an important thing that he said. But what he said was, to construct a new Palestinian and Arab culture, it's necessary to take the long and difficult path to research and to invent the accumulation and development of signs and symbols which constitute the vocabulary of our future painting. And so he was sort of critiquing the problem that he was seeing with a lot of figurative works and types of works that he was seeing produced by the Palestinian artists. And this was 1974, so keep that in mind. Claire Davies, who we heard before, actually speaks a bit about this work that we see here in a text that she wrote, and I'm going to quote one thing she says, which was that in the appearance of this work, which I will talk about, appears in a magazine, it combines a celebrated symbol of Palestinian resistance with motifs associated with the Casablanca group. So here in this work, we do see kind of his questions and a response, perhaps, this is a speculative interpretation, but a response to these Palestinian works that he was seeing and his own sort of practice and questions. We actually first see the work in an interview with Chaba in 1978's March issue of Integral, which was dedicated to the biennial in Rabat, which is where I am assuming that this work was first shown publicly. This biennial took place in late 1976, early 1977. And so this is where we see first a black and white image of the work. And the exhibition, it's important to know, opened just a few months after the siege and massacre of Tel Zatar, which was a Palestinian camp in Lebanon. So Palestine was even more on everyone's mind, as it was already for many of the artists who were practicing. Alia Nakhleh, who's a scholar, notes in a text that she wrote sort of looking at the pan-Arab festivals of that time, that at that biennial in Rabat in 1976, that Kadhim Haidar, who was the Secretary General of the Union, had proposed to artists that they treat one subject for the biennial, and that would be Palestine. It seems that only the Iraqi and the Iraqi and Palestinian pavilions really dealt with that question, but individual artists did as well. And so here you see kind of the first iteration, at least what I had seen, if we want to go chronologically, of this work. The next time we see, or I saw this image, is it was on an invitation card, and this is an invitation card. This is just a year and a half later, after the work appears in Rabat, for an exhibition that took place in Beirut. The exhibition is called the International Art Exhibition for Palestine. On March 21st, March 21st, 1978, this exhibition was inaugurated in the basement hall of the Beirut Arab University. The exhibition, planned to remain open to the public for only 2 weeks, was extended until April 25th. It was organized by the Plastic Arts Section of the Unified Information Office of the PLO, of the Palestine Liberation Organization. I know that was many offices, but it was organized from one main office under the PLO. The exhibition was essentially the seed collection for a future museum for Palestine, but until it could return to a free and democratic Palestine, it would be presented as a museum in exile or internationally itinerant exhibition. And so this exhibition, which I will show you sort of some documentation from, was inspired by the International Resistance Museum for Salvador Allende in Chile, which was a museum that took the form of an itinerant exhibition, also meant to tour until it could sort of repatriate to a free Chile. This exhibition, here you see the Arabic-English covers. The exhibition in Beirut included approximately 200 artworks donated by artists from 30 countries. I'm going to say that again. 200 artists from 30 countries, 1978, 3 years into the civil war in Beirut, and just 2 weeks after the Israeli invasion of southern Lebanon. So this is a feat as to how an exhibition of this scale and scope took place. The participating artists produced exhibition posters, as well as this invitation card where we see Shabaz's work and a catalog. And the director of the plastic art section was Jordanian artist Mona Saoudi, who is the collection's custodian. Here I'm just going to show you some images from the catalog. So you see a list of acknowledgements. It obviously took many people to, in addition to the main organizer, to make something like this happen. This is the names of artists in English, pardon the spelling mistakes. So you see the scale and scope of an exhibition. So this is the context in which this work was shown. The names in Arabic. I will go back. So this exhibition was meant to travel, and in fact, 100 works were exhibited in Tokyo the same year through my favorite art association, the Japan Afro-Asian Latin American Artists Association. Third World is Artists Group, again, very connected to kind of the practices of these artists. But what I will sort of come back to at the end is where it physically traveled to, where this work physically traveled to after. The work appears just a few weeks after the show opens in an edition of April 1978 of Shoun Falastiniye, Palestinian Affairs, which was a quarterly magazine published by the PLO's Research Center. It was not uncommon for artworks to be on the cover of this magazine, in fact, but it was, this seems to be sort of the symbol of this exhibition from the invitation catalog. I found this image online. It is not clear from the Palestine Poster Project archives where this is from. It looks like it's a cutout of this work, probably on a poster. So what's important is to see how these artworks traveled not only physically, but also where their representation went. So often in Palestinian poster production, artworks were used in magazines. Artworks appeared on the covers in the magazines as well, in newspapers. So you see artworks, from this exhibition, and artworks that were sort of very representational of support for Palestine appearing in different ways. So this is what was sort of quite interesting to me. Only last year did I find, with my colleague, this poster of what seems like the exhibition that traveled to Sur in Lebanon, also using the same artwork. I had the pleasure last year to attend an exhibition opening of the Barjeel Art Foundation's exhibition, The Sea Suspended, in Tehran in November. And as I walked into the museum, I look to the right and I see that there's the entrance to the exhibition. And when I look around, I start seeing that there's other artworks. And suddenly I see that actually 8 artworks, which I had recognized from the catalog for the International Art Exhibition for Palestine, were on the walls. They were hung in this space. This was not a huge surprise to me because I was told that, in fact, we had known that in 1980, a selection of artworks from the collection that was, started in Beirut, traveled to Tehran as one of its kind of itinerant, exhibition stops. In 1980, around, from what we understand, 40 works or so traveled to Tehran and were exhibited at the Tehran Museum of Contemporary Art, TMOCA, under the title of the exhibition, Art Exhibition for the Palestinian Resistance. It was hosted by the Writers' Union in Tehran, and a number of artists attended, including Mona Saoudi, who was invited to attend the opening. She was also accompanied by the renowned Palestinian caricature artist Naji Al-Ali, as well as artist Mustafa Al-Hallaj, and PLO political representative Hani Al-Hassan. So these works traveled to Tehran, were exhibited. I actually still have not been able to see the catalog nor any documentation of it, but the evidence of it, separate from sort of interviews, and sort of testimonies from individuals who attended the exhibition, is that these works still remain in storage. And the story is that in 1980 or 81, when they had wanted to send the works back, we have to remember that the civil war is happening in Lebanon, and so the airport was often closed. So they decided it was impossible or maybe a bad idea to actually try to bring the works back to Lebanon. So the work remains in storage in Tehran, safely kept, and along with a number of other works. And so this here is an image, a photograph that I took last November when I saw sort of this work up finally in real life. So it was a pretty amazing experience to see the work, and thankfully it's in safe hands and in storage. So I will end there. Thank you.